He laughed with his mouth full of ham and arrogance. Not everyone can handle a real career in tech, my brother Nick said, stabbing his fork into his plate like a mic drop. Some people just dabble. The entire table chuckled. Even my mother gave a soft, polite laugh, the kind you use when you don't want to pick a side. I sat there, cutting into my asparagus, like it hadn't just turned into glass in my mouth. My name is Aaron Cole, and from wherever you're watching this, stay with me. Have you ever been humiliated in a room full of people who claim to love you? Nick always had a way of dressing cruelty up his charm. The golden child with a shiny degree, the Tesla key fob, the six-figure job at that mid-tier cloud security firm no one outside his bubble could name. I was the artsy one, the startup founder, the risk taker. In our family, that meant unemployed with extra steps. I didn't respond, just smiled and reached for my wine. That's when Grandpa cleared his throat. Slowly, intentionally, like a man about to light a fire with a single match. Is that why your company just bought out his and laid him off? The room dropped into a vacuum. No sound. No movement. Even Nick's chewing stopped mid-bite. My mother blinked. My father dropped his fork. I met Grandpa's eyes. He knew. He'd read the news. The acquisition we'd kept quiet for legal reasons. The restructuring plan. The layoffs. The internal org chart I'd signed last week that included Nick's name in red. I hadn't said a word because it wasn't personal. It was business.
But now?
Now the truth sat there like a loaded gun in the middle of the mashed potatoes. Nick's voice cracked. Wait, what? I turned to him, calm, controlled. You'll get the official notice on Monday. HR's finishing up the final round. You knew, he choked out. I nodded. I built a better product. Your CEO agreed. Silence. Not a single soul moved. Grandpa raised his glass. To real careers in tech. And I just sat there, smiling. Because revenge doesn't always look like fire. Sometimes, it tastes like Easter dinner. Nick didn't speak the rest of the meal. Not one sarcastic jab. Not even a glance my way. He just stared down at his plate like it had personally betrayed him. And me? I passed the potatoes. Made small talk with Aunt Jean about her new backyard koi pond. Nodded along while my dad rambled about golf. But under the table, my hand was steady. Because for the first time in my life, I didn't have to defend myself to this family. I just had to exist and let the truth do the speaking for me. After dessert, Nick cornered me in the kitchen. You knew, he hissed. You sat there smiling while you let me get humiliated. No, I said, rinsing a plate. You humiliated yourself. I just didn't stop you. He stepped closer. This is personal. No, I said again calmly. You're just finally facing the consequences of thinking everyone else was beneath you.
He scoffed.
You've always been jealous. That made me laugh. Jealous of what? Your stock options? Your condescension? Nick, I built something that made yours obsolete. I didn't sabotage you. I evolved past you. He opened his mouth again, but Grandpa walked in. You all right, Nick? He asked, eyes narrowed, reading the room like a war veteran reads a battlefield. Nick stepped back. Fine, he muttered, just surprised. Grandpa looked at me, then at Nick. You always did talk too much, boy. Now you're gonna have to learn how to listen. Nick left after that. No goodbye. No handshake. Just the sound of his Tesla tires peeling off down the driveway. Later that night, as the house settled into its usual post-holiday silence, Grandpa sat next to me on the porch. You didn't have to do it like that, he said quietly. I didn't plan to, I replied. But he gave me the stage. He nodded, slowly. You've got your grandmother's blood. She never raised her voice. Just waited until people buried themselves. I smiled. Guess that gene skipped everyone else. Grandpa leaned back in his chair, hands folded. Let them call it revenge.
But I see what it really is.
What's that? Correction. And we sat there, quiet, as the weight of years of dismissal began to tilt. Finally, in my favor. Monday morning came like a hammer. Nick's name was officially removed from the employee directory by noon. His email? Deactivated. His access badge? Flagged in red. I didn't touch a thing. My operations lead handled the offboarding. But I saw the alert when it pinged. Nicholas Cole, final separation confirmed. I didn't gloat. I didn't post. I didn't text a single soul in the family. But the silence? It traveled. By 5 p.m., my mother called. Her voice had that soft, fake concern she wore like perfume. Aaron, did you know about this? Your brother said that he was laid off by a company he mocked at Easter dinner? Yeah. I was there, remember? A pause. It just seems harsh.
No, Mom.
You know what was harsh? Sitting through 2 years of dinners while Nick rolled his eyes every time I mentioned my company. While he joked that I was playing CEO with my little toy startup. She sighed. He's family. And I was your daughter, I said sharply. But when he called me a joke, no one corrected him. Not once. She went quiet. Then, your father wants to talk. Of course he did. He got on the line and tried to be diplomatic, the same tone he used when explaining away Nick's tantrums as stress and mine as ungratefulness. I understand the acquisition was business, he said. But blindsiding your brother? That's not how we do things in this family. I nearly laughed. Dad, this family has never once supported me without adding quotation marks around the word career. And you're worried about blindsiding? You could have warned him. No, I said coldly. He could have read the market. He could have read the press release I published 6 weeks ago. He could have treated me like I belonged at the table. Dad didn't reply. Because there was nothing left to say. That night, I posted a photo on LinkedIn. Not gloating, just a quiet announcement. Proud to lead our growing team into the next phase of innovation. Today we finalized our largest acquisition to date. We build better. We rise together. No names. No shade. Just truth. Nick saw it. I know he did.
He didn't comment.
But he updated his profile the next morning. Open to work.
I didn't laugh.
Because this wasn't revenge anymore. This was gravity. And he was finally learning what it felt like to fall. By Friday, the ripple had reached everyone. My inbox lit up with messages from people Nick used to manage. Quiet gratitude disguised as professionalism. One read. Honestly, thank you. No one ever called him out. We just survived him. I didn't reply. Because I wasn't doing this for applause. I was doing it because for years, Nick was the gatekeeper. The golden boy. The voice at family dinners who decided whose job counted and whose dreams were cute. And now, he was unemployed. And I was the reason. Still, I didn't feel triumphant. I felt clean. Until the text came in. From Nick. Coffee. I stared at it for a full minute. Not because I was tempted. Because I was curious. I agreed. Neutral ground. A small cafe 2 blocks from my office. He showed up late. Hoodie. Dark circles under his eyes. A man freshly evicted from his own ego. I'm not here to fight, he said, sliding into the seat across from me. Good, I replied. You'd lose. He gave a hollow laugh. I underestimated you. No, I said. You dismissed me. Every time I pitched a new product, every time I asked for advice, every time you rolled your eyes in front of Mom and Dad. You thought my work was small because it didn't look like yours. He looked down, stirred his untouched coffee. You know, when they told me who bought us out, I laughed. Thought it was a glitch in the system. Aaron? The UI girl? He looked up. But you weren't the glitch. I was. For a second, I saw it, the weight of realizing that the thing he mocked had quietly outbuilt him. I didn't gloat. I just said, So what do you want, Nick? He hesitated. I need work. I blinked. Are you asking me for a job? He nodded, once. Quiet. Hollow. For a long moment, I just sat there, watching him squirm in the same silence I used to drown in. Then I said, Nick, you fired 2 junior engineers for being too emotional during layoffs. Remember that. He flinched. You don't get to climb back in on the ladder you lit on fire. He opened his mouth, but I stood. Good luck, I said. I hear Starbucks is hiring. They have real careers, too. And I walked out. Because some power doesn't scream. It just walks away while they learn how cold rock bottom really is. After that coffee shop moment, Nick disappeared from my phone, from social media, from the family chat thread he used to dominate like a stage. For once, the silence wasn't mine to carry. At Sunday dinner the next week, his name hung heavy in the air like smoke. My mom poked at her casserole. My dad checked his watch twice. I didn't say a word. I brought a bottle of wine, contributed to small talk, laughed at Grandpa's dirty jokes, and passed the bread like I wasn't the elephant in the room, like I hadn't quietly dethroned their golden son. Then halfway through dessert, my mother finally cracked. "You didn't have to humiliate him," she said, setting her fork down like a weapon. I looked at her.
Come. Clear.
"You raised a son who thought humiliation was sport. I just gave him a taste of his own medicine." My dad cleared his throat. "But he's struggling." "That's your brother, Aaron." I nodded. "And I was your daughter when you let him mock me at every table, every holiday, every time I did something different. Where was this concern when he called me a failure for starting my company? When he said I'd run back crying to a real job?" My mother blinked, like she hadn't realized the receipts had been there the whole time. "You could have warned him," she tried again, weaker this time. "And he could have respected me," I said. "But you don't get both. You don't get to raise a bully, reward him for it, and then flinch when he finally gets knocked off his throne." The table went quiet. Even Grandpa didn't say anything until he raised his glass, slow and deliberate.
To Aaron.
"Who didn't just build a company. She built a spine." My chest tightened. Not from pride, from relief. Because for the first time, someone saw me at that table.
Not as the black sheep.
Not as the artsy sister, but as the architect of her own revenge. Silent, clean, undeniable. That night, I walked out into the cool air and exhaled. Nick could sit in his echo chamber of consequence.
Me?
I had an empire to scale. And this time, no one was laughing. By the following month, I was speaking on a panel at a Women in Tech conference. Not just attending, headlining. I stood under white-hot lights beside founders I used to admire from a distance, all of us framed by a banner that read, "Redefining Power, Building Without Permission." When the moderator asked about obstacles, I didn't hesitate. "I wasn't underestimated by strangers," I said. "I was underestimated by family. People who claimed to love me while belittling the work I was doing in every conversation. People who laughed when I said I was building something from scratch." The audience went quiet, not uncomfortable, reverent. I kept going. They told me I'd come crawling back. That startups were toys. That real jobs had dental plans. But what I built swallowed their definitions whole. Later, backstage, I got a message on LinkedIn from one of Nick's old teammates. He's interviewing again, using your company name as leverage, saying he helped build some of the features your team launched last year. My jaw clenched. He was clinging to my architecture like driftwood. I forwarded the message to my legal team. By morning, we'd issued a cease and desist. Let him explain that at his next interview. Meanwhile, my team closed 2 new enterprise contracts. Our valuation jumped. Investors called me now, not the other way around. I didn't tell the family. They'd see it when it hit TechCrunch. But Grandpa called that week. Said he saw the interview. Said he watched the whole thing. Then poured himself a glass of bourbon. "You finally said it out loud," he told me. "I always knew you had it in you. But now the world does." "Thanks," I whispered. "It only took a decade of being doubted." He chuckled. "You were never the weak one, Aaron. You were just the quiet one. They mistook your silence for softness. But silence, that's just a weapon waiting to be drawn." After we hung up, I looked around my office. Not the one-bedroom startup closet anymore, but a full floor of glass and steel, humming with possibility. Nick had mocked my ambition. Then my ambition made him irrelevant. And I hadn't even raised my voice. The next family gathering was my dad's birthday. I didn't want to go. But Grandpa called the night before. "You've already won, kid," he said. "No need to flinch now. Let them sit in the kingdom you built." So, I went. Wore black slacks, sleek boots, a blouse that said boardroom but whispered battle ready. I brought a bottle of rare whiskey for my dad, the same kind he used to say was for people who actually achieved something. Nick was already there when I arrived. He didn't look at me. He didn't have to. He was thinner. Eyes tired. Jaw clenched like he was holding in the apology he'd never say. I sat 2 seats away. Let the night unfold like nothing had ever shifted. But everything had. When someone brought up tech, my aunt asking if that crypto thing was still a thing, Nick opened his mouth and paused, then closed it, because everyone at that table turned to me instead. And I answered.
Calm.
Articulate. Commanding. Because I'd been living the answers while he played CEO in borrowed titles. At the end of the night, Dad clapped me on the back. "We're proud of you, you know." I smiled, but didn't soften. "You never said that when I was building it in my garage." He swallowed. "We didn't see it then." "No," I said. "You chose not to." He didn't argue, didn't deny, just nodded. It wasn't an apology, but it was a start. Nick lingered by the doorway when I grabbed my coat. "You did it," he said. I turned. "I know." He looked like he wanted to say more. Maybe something that sounded like sorry or save me, or at least help me. But I wasn't his safety net anymore. I was the storm he ignored until it broke his roof open.
So I left.
No hug, no speech, just the sound of my heels on tile. Steady and sharp. Because some victories don't need fireworks. Just a room full of people finally learning to shut up and listen. The article dropped on a Tuesday morning. From garage to giant. How Aaron Cole quietly built the company that changed the industry. Front page of Tech Foundry Weekly. They got it right. No gimmicks. No female founder angle with glitter and pity. Just a detailed breakdown of what I built. How I built it. And how I did it while being mocked. By rivals, by investors, by my own blood. I didn't send it to the family. Didn't need to. They saw it. By noon, my phone buzzed with messages. Old colleagues. College friends. Even an ex-boyfriend who once said I should probably marry someone with a real job. But one message stopped me cold. From Nick. No subject. No fluff. Just, "You won."
I see that now.
I don't know who I am without being better than you. I stared at it, read it 3 times, and deleted it. Because this wasn't about winning anymore. This was about remembering who I was before they taught me to doubt it. That night, I walked through my office after everyone left. Paused by the framed newspaper on the wall, the first little feature we ever got. We taped it up with packing tape. I left the edges rough. On purpose. A reminder. We came from the ground. And we rose without permission. I stepped into my corner office, turned off the lights, and looked out at the city. Glowing. Buzzing.
Alive.
The empire was real. The silence was over. And Nick? He could keep telling himself whatever story made the mirror easier. But deep down he knew. He tried to laugh me off the table.
And now?
That table was mine.
There was a seat for everyone except me. I stood in the doorway of the dining room holding a small wrapped gift in both hands. The house smelled like cinnamon-baked ham and pine. Someone had taken time with the table candles lit, name cards in careful cursive crystal glasses catching the soft light. My name wasn't there. At the head of the table sat my older brother Colin, still broad-shouldered, still wearing that smirk like it was stitched to his face. He was slicing into the honey ham like he owned the moment. Maybe he thought he did. Lana was beside him. My cousin. She wore one of my mother's old scarves, silk pale green, the one Mom used to save for Christmas Eve services. Lana sipped from her wine glass like she belonged here, like she'd always belonged. I looked around again. Maybe I missed something. Maybe a chair had been pulled away to make room for the pies. But no, the table was set, full, complete, without me. I turned to my mother, Joyce. She was arranging sweet potatoes in a dish with marshmallows avoiding my eyes. When I opened my mouth to speak, she glanced at the turkey like it had just asked her a question. "I think—" "You forgot my seat," I said, keeping my voice low. Colin didn't even pause chewing. Without looking up, he said it flat clean like it cost him nothing. "It's outside. With the dogs." There was a breathless silence. Lana let out a quiet snort. One of the second cousins shifted in his chair. A fork clicked against porcelain. But no one said a word. No one laughed. No one objected. I stood there, cheeks burning. I wasn't sure what stung more, that he said it, or that everyone else let it stay in the air like a prayer no one would claim. I could have turned. I could have said something loud, made a scene. But instead, I stepped forward, set the small box down in front of Colin's plate, then leaned in close enough that only he could hear "check under your plate." And I walked out. Didn't wait for anyone to stop me. Didn't look back. Just stepped into the December night and let the cold tell me I was still alive. When I was little, Christmas was my favorite day in the whole world. Back then, the tree stood by the living room window, not some carefully curated photo op, but a slightly lopsided pine with mismatched ornaments we'd collected over the years. Colin and I would argue over whose turn it was to hang the glass reindeer, the one with the cracked antler. Dad would break up the fight by holding it himself and declaring this one's for peace. And peace doesn't pick sides. That was our dad. Russell Blake. He smelled like engine oil and cedar chips and always had a grease stain on his shirt, even at Christmas. But when he smiled, the whole room felt steady. He'd ruffle my hair and say, "You've got grit, kid. You're gonna outlast all of us." I didn't know what he meant then. I thought he was just being funny. Now, I think, maybe he saw something even I hadn't. Colin used to be different too. He and I once built a snow fort so high we couldn't see over it. I slipped on the ice trying to climb it and busted my lip, and he cried harder than I did. Brought me inside yelling for Mom. Wrapped me in a blanket and said, "You're not allowed to die. Ever." That version of him, the one who gave me the last piece of fudge and let me sit shotgun when we went to get firewood, I don't know where he went. I don't know when he left. And Mom, she used to sing while cooking. Her voice was soft, barely in tune, but I remember the way she'd hum Silent Night while peeling potatoes. Sometimes she'd twirl in her slipper's apron, flaring just a bit when she thought no one was looking. I looked. She used to make sure my favorite mug, white with faded holly leaves, was waiting on the table with hot cocoa and too many marshmallows. I didn't see it this year, didn't expect to, but I still noticed. What happened to that house? What happened to the people who lived in it? Was I the only one who remembered the good parts? Because somewhere along the way, the laughter turned sharp. The warmth cooled. And Colin started speaking for the family like it was his to interpret. My voice got smaller. My name showed up less. Until one day it stopped showing up at all. And still I kept showing up. Hoping it was just grief. Hoping it was just stress. Hoping they'd see me. But hope can go blind if you feed it long enough. And I think mine did. It didn't happen all at once. There wasn't a fight or a slammed door or some dramatic falling out. No one yelled at me to leave. No one said, "You're not family anymore." They just stopped including me. At first it was subtle. I'd call to check in on Dad. This was back when his memory started slipping, when he'd forget the names of tools, or call me that girl on the phone. And Colin would answer upbeat as ever, "Dad's resting right now. I'll let him know you called." A few days later, I'd try again. "He's in a fog today. Not the best time." Eventually, I stopped hearing Dad's voice altogether. Just updates filtered through Colin, always wrapped in concern. Always protecting someone. Mom started deferring too. I'd ask how she was holding up, and she'd say things like, "Colin's been such a help. He really knows how to handle things. It's just easier when things go through him." At first, I didn't push. I told myself they were tired, that maybe I was being sensitive. I was living in Austin then, working long hours at a marketing firm. I sent money home every month, paid part of the roof repair without being asked, booked flights back for every major holiday. Still, I started noticing things. One Christmas, my old stocking was missing from the fireplace mantel. I found it later stuffed in the back of the hallway closet. The framed photo of me and Dad taken on the day he gave me his old toolbox vanished from the wall. In its place was a new photo Colin and Lana at the garden center, holding a flat of mums like they'd just saved the family homestead. I told myself it didn't mean anything. Then, one Sunday, I logged onto social media and saw pictures from what they called an impromptu family dinner. All of them. Around the same table I used to help set, laughing, toes touching under the chairs I once sanded down with Dad. No one had called me. No one had even thought to mention it. When I asked Mom about it, she said it was last minute. "You live so far. We figured you wouldn't want the hassle." She didn't hear the way her words landed. Or maybe she did and chose to let them land anyway. From then on, the pattern was clear. Decisions were made without me. About Dad's treatment, about the house, about finances. Colin explained everything after the fact, always with a tone that made it sound like he was doing me a favor. "Didn't want to bother you while you're busy. It's just easier this way." Easier. For whom I wasn't angry. Not yet. Just confused. Off balance. Like someone had slowly been turning the volume down on my voice until I couldn't hear it myself. They never told me to go. They just stopped saving me a seat. The first time I realized Lana had moved in, she answered the phone from my mother's kitchen. I could hear the ceramic clink of the spoon against Mom's favorite mug, the one with the cardinals on it. Lana laughed at something in the background, Colin probably, and said, "Hold on, your mom's elbow deep in pie dough." Your mom. That word sat heavy in my chest for days. I asked Joyce about it a week later, careful not to sound accusatory. "Is Lana staying with you now, just helping out? She's been a godsend. You know how things have been." A godsend. This was the same Lana who 3 years earlier had borrowed Mom's sapphire earrings and claimed she thought they were hers, who lied about a missing checkbook at Thanksgiving, who once cried on the porch and said, "I don't know why everyone thinks I'm the bad one." And now here she was, setting the table I used to set, wearing the scarves Mom used to wrap around her shoulders on snowy mornings, leaving handwritten notes on the fridge chickens in the oven. Took Mom to PT. At first, I told myself it was practical. They needed someone around. And I hadn't been. Not physically, anyway. But slowly, Lana stopped being a helper and became the one who knows where everything is. When I called to ask how Dad's doctor visit went, Lana was the one who answered. When I sent flowers for Mom's birthday, Lana texted me a thank you with a photo of Mom holding the bouquet standing beside her. The caption read, "She loved them great day, I wasn't in the picture." I wasn't in any picture anymore. I started asking questions. Colin's answers were vague. "She's just around to help with errands. It's not like she's taking over." But when I visited for Dad's memorial, Lana greeted guests at the door. She wore a black dress, simple and neat, the same one I'd worn to my uncle's funeral years ago. I recognized the hemline the way it fell just above the knee. I had left it in the closet upstairs. It wasn't hers. She stood by the coffee table pouring cider, telling stories about Dad like she'd known him better than I had. People nodded. They smiled. They believed her. And I just stood there, coat still on hands, cold, watching my place disappear piece by piece. Later that evening, I tried to bring it up to Mom. I didn't want to accuse. I just needed to know where I stood. "She's just trying to help Marin. You've always been too sensitive about things." That's when I realized it. It wasn't that they forgot me. It was that they'd found someone easier to replace me with. 2 months before Christmas, I drove up to the house without calling ahead. I wasn't planning to go inside. I thought maybe I'd just sit in the driveway, look at the old porch swing, and remind myself of who I used to be when this place still felt like mine. But when I pulled up, the driveway was empty. No sign of Colin's truck. No Lana in the window, no motion in the kitchen. I stepped out anyway. My key still worked. The house was quieter than I remembered. No music, no TV. Just the hum of the heater and the faint creak of floorboards that still spoke when no one else would. I found myself drifting toward Dad's study. It was the only room no one had rearranged. Everything else in the house felt slightly off, like it had been staged to look familiar, but something was missing behind the eyes. But his study was untouched. The old recliner still sagged in the middle. His toolbox sat beneath the bookshelf, paint-chipped and rusted. A clock ticked softly by the window, the one with the dusty face and brass hands that always ran 10 minutes slow. And then I saw it, the cabinet in the corner, dark wood brass handle. I'd seen him open it a dozen times growing up, but I never paid attention to what went inside. I knelt down and pulled. It stuck at first, then gave way. Inside a small metal safe. My breath caught. I remembered something suddenly. A long time ago, maybe high school, he'd tucked a tiny key inside his favorite book. Said it was for just in case. I reached up, scanned the shelves. Travels with Charlie by Steinbeck. Worn spine, cracked leather. The key was still there. When the safe clicked open, I didn't know what I expected. Maybe old receipts, maybe nothing. But there it was. An envelope. Thick, cream paper. My name on the front written in his hand. I sat down on the floor, knees to my chest, and opened it. Inside, a notarized will, dated 2 weeks before he died. Every asset, this house, the savings, the land in Monument Valley, was left to me. Colin's name wasn't mentioned once. Neither was Lana's. And behind the will, a note, folded, yellowed slightly at the edges. It said, "Marin, I see it now. I didn't before, and I'm sorry. You never asked for anything. You just stayed. You protected me when no one else did. This house is yours. You've earned it. Love, Dad." I didn't cry at the funeral. I cried on that floor. Not for the house, but because in the end, someone saw me. I didn't tell anyone I was coming. I dressed in dark jeans and a navy coat, nothing dramatic, nothing that screamed, "Look at me." I brought a single box wrapped in plain brown paper, tied with twine. It was Christmas Eve. The Blake house still had the same string of colored lights blinking unevenly. The wreath on the door was slightly crooked. Someone had replaced the welcome mat. It used to say, "Home is where Dad is." Now it read, "Joyful Season." I knocked once, then let myself in. No one heard me at first. The dining room was already full. Colin at the head of the table, Lana to his right, her hand resting lightly on his arm. Mom sat across, smiling in that soft, distant way that used to be reserved for guests. My seat wasn't there. Again. This time I didn't flinch. I stepped forward, placed the box in the center of the table, and looked directly at Colin. He blinked. "Marin, what are you—" I didn't give him the satisfaction of finishing the question. "Check under your plate," I said, voice low, but firm. He glanced down, lifted the charger, and found a single key. It was old brass, worn smooth with use. Dad's safe key. Colin's eyes flicked up to mine. Confusion first. Then a flicker of something else, nervousness. No, not yet. He didn't know enough to be afraid. Joyce rose halfway, her smile faltering. "Marin, this isn't— I'm not staying," I said. "Just wanted to drop that off." Lana reached for the box. "Is it a gift?" I looked at her for the first time all evening. Looked through her, really. In a way. She flushed, hand retreating. I turned toward the door. No one followed. No one asked me to stay. Not really. Colin was already lifting the box's lid. Joyce said, "Wait, what is this?" I was halfway down the front steps when I heard chairs scrape, voices rise. I didn't stop. The night was sharp air cold against my throat. I walked back to my car. Sat for a moment in the driver's seat. Let the silence settle. Because what they found in that box wasn't wrapped in malice. It was wrapped in truth. The copy of Dad's will. The letter. A small photograph, me and him, shoulder to shoulder from the summer I helped him rebuild the fence. Nothing dramatic. Just enough. Let them read it in their own voices. In their own time. Let them sit at that table full, but with one chair always conspicuously empty. Would they still pretend I was just too sensitive? That I imagined it all? And if so, who left that key? They started calling the next morning. First, it was Joyce. Just a voicemail. "Hi, sweetie. We read what you left. It caught us off guard, that's all. We should talk. I think we all just need to breathe and maybe come together. As a family. No apology. Just caught off guard." Then Colin sent a text. "Can we meet?" There's a lot to discuss. I think we all misunderstood each other. Not a word about the will. Or the letter. Then Lana messaged me. Just a sad face emoji, nothing else. For a week, I let the messages pile up. They tried new angles, confusion, nostalgia, even guilt. Your dad wouldn't want this rift, Marin. We're still your family. Let's not let bitterness ruin the holidays. But bitterness hadn't ruined anything. Erasure had. And the thing is, I wasn't angry anymore. I didn't want revenge. I didn't want to prove a point. I just didn't want to go back. I didn't block their numbers. I didn't argue. I didn't defend myself. I just stopped responding. I think that unsettled them more than anything else. One afternoon, Colin tried showing up at my office unannounced. My assistant sent him away. I never told her to. She just said afterward he didn't look like someone you'd want to see. She was right. A few days later, Mom called again. This time I picked up. Her voice was quiet, fragile. Marin, I think we made mistakes, but this family, it's still yours too. I waited a beat, then said I was always there. You just lived easier when I wasn't. She didn't respond, not because she disagreed, but because there was nothing left to say. 3 weeks after Christmas, I mailed one last envelope. No return address. Inside, the original photo of Dad and me, the one from the fence rebuild, the one that had been quietly taken down from the hallway wall years ago. I didn't include a note. I didn't need to. A week later, a neighbor sent me a picture. I hadn't asked for it, she just thought I'd want to know. The photo had been rehung. Not inside the Blake house. Not over the fireplace or beside the dining table. It was tacked up in the old shed behind the garden Dad's tool shed. The one place no one else ever went. There it was slightly crooked, hanging above the workbench. Just a girl and her father standing side by side, smiling like the world made sense. No caption, no explanation. I stared at the image for a long time, then closed my phone. That house. It may belong to me on paper, but the real inheritance wasn't brick or timber. It was this knowing. I never needed them to admit what they did, because the truth already exists, and it doesn't go away when ignored. I still live in Austin. Still drink from that holly mug I took back quietly after the memorial. It chips a little more each winter. I let it. Sometimes people ask if I ever reconciled with my family. I tell them I was always part of the story. They just wrote around me. And now they don't get to write me out. I never asked to be seen. I just wanted to exist. If you've ever been erased but chose to remain true, just leave a single heart icon.
The wrapping paper was gold, thick, elegant, tied with a velvet ribbon. Inside was a sealed envelope, neatly folded. 3 months of fully covered rent. I handed it to my sister with a quiet smile. It wasn't flashy. It wasn't meant to be. Just a small act of relief for her. Someone who'd been struggling, according to every whispered conversation my mother had dropped in my lap over the last few weeks. Rachel opened the envelope, slowly, read the card, looked at the check, then looked up at me, loud enough for the whole family to hear. Tries to compensate for the fact that she's not needed by this family. The room went still. Then someone, I think my cousin, let out a laugh. And then the rest joined in. The kind of laughter that doesn't just sting, it slices. I felt it hit like a slap. But I didn't flinch. I reached forward, plucked the envelope right back from Rachel's hands, tucked it into my coat pocket and said, "Useful to know. No yelling. No drama. Just truth." 10 minutes later, I was walking toward the door when I heard someone say, "Wait, Emily, seriously, don't be like that." Then another voice, my mother's. "Emily, please, just come back. Let's talk." By the time I shut the front door behind me, the whole house was shouting, "Please listen to US." But I didn't, because for once I was listening to myself. My name is Emily Carter, and from wherever you're watching this video, stay with me. Because the night they laughed at my kindness was the same night they stopped laughing altogether. I've always been the dependable one. Not the loudest, not the favorite, just the one everyone could count on. When Rachel totaled her car in college, I co-signed the loan for the new one.
When Dad's small business hit a rough patch, I quietly wired money from my savings. When Mom needed help planning Grandma's funeral, I took unpaid leave to arrange everything. No one asked if I could afford it. No one checked to see how I was doing. They just assumed I'd handle it, because that's what I'd always done. The invisible daughter, the steady hand. I didn't give to be noticed, at least that's what I told myself. I gave because it felt like love. Like maybe, just maybe, if I kept showing up, they'd finally see me as more than the fallback plan. Rachel, on the other hand, was the sparkle. She always had a flair for making scenes. Failed classes? It was the professor's fault. Broken friendships? They were jealous. Every family event revolved around her. Her job drama, her on and off boyfriend, her endless crises. Mom called it personality. I called it convenient, because no matter how much mess Rachel created, someone else always cleaned it up. Usually me. And still, I thought this year might be different. She'd been late on rent 3 times, Mom said. Behind on utilities. She was trying, but work had been slow. So I did what I always did, quietly made things easier. 3 months of covered rent. No fanfare, just a gesture of support. And she took it, held it in front of everyone, and mocked me. She's not needed. Like kindness was embarrassing. Like being dependable was pitiful. Like the worst thing a woman could be was useful. I watched them all laugh. My mother, my cousins, even my aunt, the one who cried when I helped pay off her medical bills 5 years ago. In that moment, I wasn't humiliated. I was done. Because when someone shows you what your presence means to them, believe them. And when they laugh at the version of you that's always carried their weight, you don't argue. You put it down. For good. After I walked out of that house, I didn't cry. Not in the car. Not when I got home. Not even the next morning when I opened my email to a long message from my mother titled, "Let's not overreact." I read every word. Rachel was just being playful. You know how sarcastic she is. We all appreciate you, even if we don't always say it. Every line was a masterclass in deflection. Not once did she acknowledge what happened. Not once did she ask how I felt. It was damage control. Rehearsed. Hollow. I didn't reply. Instead, I opened my bank app, and I started pulling plugs. First, the automatic payment for Rachel's car insurance. She hadn't even known I was covering it. Mom had quietly asked me to help her get on her feet months ago. Canceled. Next, the savings account I set up for Dad's side business, the one where I was the only one contributing. Closed. Then, the shared family Netflix and Spotify plans I was managing. Small things, but symbolic. Gone. I wasn't angry. I wasn't out for revenge. I just realized I was done volunteering for a family that didn't even see me as a person, just a resource. Over the next few days, the silence got louder. Rachel didn't reach out. Not once. No apology, no explanation, no accountability. That didn't surprise me. What did surprise me was how free I felt. The absence of obligation. The way my calendar felt suddenly lighter, my evenings longer. I cooked for myself, took walks, slept better. I kept waiting for the guilt to creep in, the pull to make things right. But it didn't come. Instead, I found myself breathing, really breathing, for the first time in years. Then, 5 days after Christmas, the text started. "Emily, have you been paying Rachel's insurance? Hey, why isn't the card working for the business account? Did you cancel Netflix?" I didn't answer any of them. I wasn't being petty. I was being clear. Because people like that, the ones who never say thank you, who joke about your generosity like it's pathetic, they don't understand boundaries unless you draw them in permanent ink. I had drawn mine. Thick, sharp, uncrossable. And for the first time, they were starting to realize I hadn't just taken back a gift. I had taken back me. You know, what happens when you stop feeding a system that runs on your silence? It starts to starve. At first, they don't notice. It's a missed payment here, a forgotten login there. Small things, inconveniences, but then the gaps widen. And when you've been the glue, the quiet engine behind the scenes, your absence starts to echo. I didn't post a dramatic announcement. No cryptic Instagram quote about boundaries or healing. No long emails saying, "I'm done." because I wasn't giving them anything else to hold on to, not even closure. I just stopped. I pulled out of the family's group vacation planning thread, removed my card from the travel booking site, unsubscribed from the newsletter Rachel was running, the one I'd built for her, branded for her, paid monthly fees to keep live. She emailed me twice. Hey, the payment didn't go through. Can you just update your card? You've always handled that. I didn't reply. And when she tried again, this time from a different address, I blocked her. I wasn't being cruel. I was being consistent. Consistency was something I'd always given freely, even when I didn't deserve it. I showed up. I remembered birthdays. I sent flowers when they were sad, food when they were sick, and money when they were in a tough spot. It had never been reciprocated. Not once. The Christmas before this one, I paid for the entire dinner, catered. Rachel had shown up 3 hours late, snapped a selfie in front of the tree I decorated, and left before dessert. No one thanked me. No one even noticed when I stayed behind afterward to clean alone. This time they noticed everything. I heard from my cousin Mia that the group business account was locked. I had removed myself as co-owner. Apparently, the legal paperwork I'd filed months earlier had just taken effect. I was no longer financially tied to any of them. Mom tried calling, twice in one day. I didn't pick up. Then she sent a message. Emily, I don't understand what you're doing. We're family. Can't we move on from one awkward moment? One awkward moment? That wasn't awkward. That was betrayal with a bow on top. They humiliated me when I offered help, not because they misunderstood me, but because my usefulness threatened their egos. They were comfortable with me giving, as long as I stayed small while doing it. Now, I was stepping out of the background, and they hated that more than they ever appreciated the help. So I let the silence grow. I let them squirm. I let the weight they used to toss on me fall squarely back into their own hands. And I didn't say a single word, because some messages don't need to be sent. They're felt. The funny thing about people who take you for granted, they don't realize what you do until it stops being done. 10 minutes after I left that Christmas gathering, I imagine it still smelled like ham and cinnamon, still looked festive, still sparkled under the tree I helped decorate. But the mood? It shifted. My cousin Mia called me the next day to check in. She's the only one who ever saw through Rachel's nonsense, quietly, never out loud. She said, Emily, what happened after you left? I've never seen them panic like that. Apparently, someone finally opened the family Venmo account to confirm the vacation deposit, only to find the balance at zero, because I'd pulled my share and locked them out. Then, someone realized Rachel's rent hadn't been paid and wasn't going to be. Then the Netflix logged out. Then the Spotify. Then the shared grocery delivery plan Mom had been using on my dime for the past year stopped working mid-order. At first, they thought it was a tech glitch. Then reality crept in like a cold draft. They had laughed. They had mocked. And then they watched the foundation they never noticed crack, piece by piece, with no one to stop the fall. They weren't sad I left. They were terrified that I meant it, that I wasn't going to come back like I always did, that I wasn't going to accept the fake apologies, the half hugs, the excuses like, you know how Rachel is. This wasn't Emily having a moment. This was Emily vanishing and taking the structure with her. By New Year's Eve, the family group chat was a war zone. I didn't read the messages directly, but Mia sent me a few screenshots. Rachel was playing victim. I said one thing and she overreacted. It's not like I burned her house down. Mom defended her as always. It was a joke. We didn't mean it. She's being dramatic. Dad said nothing. Of course he didn't. That was always his role, the passive background figure. Loud during football games. Silent when things actually mattered. Then the tone changed. Emily, please. We're a family. We need to talk. And the word they mocked me for, needed, suddenly turned on them. Because what they were really saying was, we don't know how to function without you. We don't know how to clean up the mess now that you've stopped holding the mop. We don't know how to be a family unless you're fixing it for us. And I didn't respond. Not once. Instead, I bought a new planner. One with no birthdays marked. No family dinners circled. No reminders to send flowers or transfer money or set up Zoom calls for game night. Just blank days. waiting to be filled with people who saw me as more than a convenience, wrapped in polite silence, people who wouldn't laugh when I gave, who wouldn't use gratitude as a weapon, who didn't see boundaries as betrayal. Let them shout. Let them scramble. Let them realize the gift they threw away. Because they made one thing crystal clear. I wasn't needed, and that was the most liberating thing I'd ever learned. The first voicemail came 2 weeks after Christmas. It was my mother. Her voice was careful, the kind she used when she was afraid she might not be in control anymore. Emily, I just want to talk. We miss you. Your sister. Well, she regrets what she said. You know how she is. Please call me back. I didn't. Not because I was being cruel, but because I didn't believe her. Regret in our family was just code for say something nice so she'll come back and fix this. A few days later, Rachel posted an Instagram story, just a picture of her Christmas tree, still up in mid-January with a caption. Not all presents are what they seem. Some people are just too sensitive. Subtle in her usual way, a jab in glitter. She wasn't sorry. She was embarrassed. Because her support system, the one she never acknowledged, had pulled the plug. I muted her account, blocked my mom's number. I told myself it was temporary. But the longer the silence stretched, the more I realized how peaceful life could be when I wasn't constantly cleaning up behind people who never said thank you. Instead of phone calls about someone's overdue rent or small emergencies, my days were full of quiet, calm. I went to work, came home, cooked for myself, started reading again, signed up for a weekend ceramics class just because I liked the idea of making something with my hands. I wasn't waking up dreading messages. I wasn't planning my calendar around other people's drama. I wasn't budgeting to fix someone else's crisis. It was the kind of freedom you don't even know you're missing until you taste it. Mia, my cousin, the only one who didn't jump on the bandwagon, invited me to brunch one Sunday. I almost didn't go, but I'm glad I did. She didn't pressure me, didn't say you should talk to them. She just asked how I was. And when I said, honestly, peaceful, she smiled and said, yeah, I can tell. I think that was the moment I knew I wasn't going back. Not in a dramatic, slam the door kind of way. Just quietly, like someone stepping into a room where they finally belong and realizing they never needed permission to be there. Around that time, I got a promotion at work. A big one. I was offered a lead role on a project I'd been hoping for all year. The funny part? Rachel found out before I told anyone. She emailed me. Just 2 lines. Congrats. Guess you're doing fine without us. That last word, us, stuck out. Because she meant without her. Without Mom. Without the whole web of people who had kept me small while pretending it was love. I didn't reply. I didn't need to. Because Rachel was finally learning what it felt like to not be needed. And I was learning something, too. Love that comes with strings isn't love. It's control. Support that only shows up when you're useful isn't support. It's dependence in disguise. I had spent most of my adult life trying to prove I belonged at a table that had no seat for me. Now, I was building my own table, and it wasn't made of guilt. It was made of peace. That Christmas, I didn't wait for an invitation. I didn't check the group chat. Didn't browse holiday flights. Didn't wonder what theme my mother had chosen for the decorations or whether Rachel would post another curated carousel of perfectly lit chaos. I just planned something for myself. I hosted Christmas Eve in my apartment. Not the biggest space, but it held warmth like a second skin. I hung string lights across my kitchen window, baked cinnamon rolls from scratch, and sent out invites to the people who had actually shown up for me that year. For guests came. Mia, of course, with a bottle of wine and a laugh that filled the entire room. Jules, a co-worker turned friend who once brought me soup when I was sick. Nina and Leah, a couple I'd met at my ceramics class, who'd never once made me feel like a third wheel, just a welcome human. There were no cameras, no passive-aggressive jabs over the mashed potatoes, no competition for who gave the best gift. Just joy, chosen joy, the kind you can feel humming beneath a quiet dinner table. At one point, Jules raised her glass. To Emily, she said, for showing us what peace really looks like. I didn't know how to respond, because for so long I had been the one in the background, organizing, fixing, giving, not the one being toasted. I didn't want to cry, but I did. Just a little. Not from sadness. From arrival. I had landed somewhere real. That night, after everyone left and the dishes were done, I sat by the window with a blanket and a mug of peppermint tea. Outside, the city moved like it always did. Lights blinking, cars passing, laughter rising up from a nearby bar. I didn't miss my family, not even a little. And that was a truth I never thought I'd be able to say without guilt. I used to think peace came after forgiveness, that I had to go back, explain myself, smooth things over, convince them to see my worth. But peace had nothing to do with them. It came the moment I stopped waiting for them to change. I checked my phone once before bed. One missed call, my mother. No voicemail, just the timestamp. I turned off my phone. No part of me wanted to hear her voice. Not anymore, because silence isn't always absence. Sometimes it's protection. Sometimes it's love for yourself. The next morning, Christmas Day, I woke up to sunlight through my blinds and no expectations pulling me out of bed. I made breakfast, read a book, wrote in my journal, and for the first time in years, I didn't feel like I had to prove anything to anyone. Because the greatest gift I gave myself that holiday was space. And in that space, I found everything I'd ever wanted. Not perfection, not applause, just peace. It's strange how one sentence can stay with you. She's not needed by this family. Rachel said it like a joke, like it was funny how I kept trying to matter. And maybe it was to them. Maybe my kindness, my effort, my loyalty was just background noise in a house that only heard what it wanted. But that sentence, it never left me. At first it stung. Then it stuck. And eventually it started to sound like freedom. Not needed. For years, I mistook being needed for being loved. I thought that if I was useful, if I handled the details, absorbed the blame, smoothed the cracks, then maybe I was valuable. It's a lie we don't talk about enough. That being depended on is the same as being appreciated. It's not. Being needed meant I could never rest. Being needed meant I couldn't say no without being called difficult. Being needed meant the second I pulled back, the whole system trembled, and they blamed me for the collapse. So when I walked out of that house on Christmas Day, I didn't just take back an envelope. I took back my identity. I let go of the role they assigned me, the helper, the fixer, the one who never needed anything, but was always expected to give everything. And I stepped into something much more powerful, myself. Now, I wake up in a home where no one expects me to save them. I walk through rooms that don't echo with guilt. I laugh, often and loudly, with people who would never reduce me to a punchline. I give still, but from a full place, not a bleeding one. And when I choose to give now, it's a gift, not a transaction in a game I never agreed to play. I don't know what my family says about me these days. Maybe that I've changed. Maybe that I'm cold. Maybe that I overreacted. But I'm not cold. I'm clear. And clarity is the thing they never expected me to find because they relied on my confusion to keep me in line. They used to throw family at me like a chain. But family, when it's built on shame and control, isn't sacred. It's a trap. I stopped calling it family the day they laughed when I tried to help. And I haven't called since. I'm not bitter. Truly. In fact, I wish them well. I hope they figure out how to keep their lives afloat without someone bailing them out behind the scenes. I hope Rachel figures out how to live without performing superiority. I hope my mother finds out what it feels like to earn forgiveness, not demand it. But none of that is my responsibility anymore, because they were right. I'm not needed, and I don't want to be, because I finally learned. Being needed is the price you pay when people don't know how to love you unconditionally. And being free, that's what happens when you stop buying your seat at a table that was always too small. The last thing I did that year was frame something I wrote in my journal, just 4 lines. It hangs above my desk now. They laughed when I gave. I smiled when I left. I said nothing else. And they heard everything